Hey there, wonderful listener. How are you doing today? I hope you're having a peaceful evening, wherever you might be. Thank you so much for tuning in to Boring Sci-Fi for Sleep. I'm so glad you're here with us tonight. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Are you cozy in bed? Perhaps you're in a comfortable chair. Or maybe you're already nestled under your favorite blanket. Wherever you are, I hope you're comfortable and ready to let your mind drift away on a gentle journey through the stars. Tonight's story is a quiet one. There's no danger here, no dramatic tension, just the soft hum of a ship making its way through the vast, peaceful darkness of space. So take a deep breath, let your shoulders relax, and allow yourself to settle in. Close your eyes if you'd like. We're going on a journey together, but it's the kind of journey where nothing urgent happens, where time moves slowly and peacefully, where you can simply let go. The generation ship Perseverance had been traveling for 73 years, 4 months, and 18 days. It would continue traveling for another 347 years, 2 months, and 12 days before reaching its destination, the Alpha Centauri system, specifically Proxima Centauri b, a planet that orbital surveys had determined might support human life. The ship was enormous, though you wouldn't know it from the silence that filled its corridors. It measured nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, shaped like a vast cylinder that rotated slowly to create artificial gravity along its inner surface. But despite its size, most of the ship was dark and quiet. Almost no one walked its halls. Almost no one looked out its observation windows at the endless field of stars that remained perfectly still, barely shifting position, even after decades of travel. This was because of the sleepers. In the suspended animation chambers, arranged in neat rows like library shelves extending through multiple decks, 98,142 people slept. They had been sleeping for 73 years. They would sleep for 347 more. They slept in pods that regulated their body temperature, their heart rate, their neurological activity. They slept deeply, dreamlessly for the most part, their bodies aging so slowly that a year of ship time equaled perhaps a week of biological time. But not everyone slept. Some people had to remain awake, at least for a while. The ship operated on a rotation system. Every 20 years, a new crew would be awakened, and the previous crew would go into suspension. This ensured that fresh minds maintained the ship, that no one had to endure the psychological weight of too many years in the void, that the journey would be shared across generations, though those generations would be staggered and strange, people aging at different rates, missing different decades. The current crew consisted of 47 people. They had been awake for 14 years now. In 6 more years, they would train their replacements and then take their turn in the pods. Dr. Amara Okonkwo often spent her evenings in Observation Deck C. It was rarely used. Most of the crew preferred the recreation areas, the hydroponics gardens, or the small library. But Amara liked the quiet of it. She liked sitting in the darkness with only the stars for light. Tonight, she sat in her usual spot, a chair positioned directly in front of the main viewport. The window was 10 meters wide and 5 meters tall, made of reinforced transparent aluminum, protected by external shutters that could close in milliseconds if a micrometeorite threat was detected. But the shutters were open now, and the view was exactly as it had been the night before, and the night before that, and every night for 14 years. Stars, countless stars, a field of white and blue and occasionally red points of light against absolute blackness. The Milky Way stretched across the view like a river of diamond dust. No planets were visible to the naked eye at this distance. No sun looked larger than any other. Sol, Earth's sun, was behind them now, indistinguishable from the thousands of other stars. Amara found it peaceful. She knew some of the crew found the view disturbing, the unchanging nature of it, the vastness, the reminder of how insignificant they were. But Amara liked being reminded that she was small. It made her problems feel smaller too. She held a cup of tea, synthesized, but not bad, and watched the stars and thought about very little. This was her meditation. This was how she quieted her mind before sleep. She thought about the sleepers, as she often did. As ship's physician, she was responsible for monitoring their vital signs, checking the pod systems, ensuring that the suspended animation was proceeding without complications. In 14 years, she had lost 3 sleepers, 2 to equipment malfunctions that couldn't be corrected in time, 1 to a pre-existing condition that hadn't been caught during pre-flight screening, an aneurysm that ruptured despite the reduced strain on the cardiovascular system. 3 out of 98,000, statistically acceptable. But Amara remembered each of them. She remembered their faces from their file photos. She remembered the quiet procedures to remove their bodies from the pods, the brief ceremony in the forward chapel, the release of their remains into space where they would drift forever, traveling on their own trajectory through the galaxy. She wondered sometimes if they still dreamed, in whatever existence came after. She wondered if they dreamed of reaching Alpha Centauri, of stepping onto a new world. She hoped they did. The bridge. The bridge of the Perseverance was not like the bridges of old naval vessels, or even the bridges imagined in pre-launch entertainment programs. There were no dramatic captain's chairs, no walls of blinking lights and urgent displays. The bridge was small and quiet, more like a research office than a command center. Tonight, only one person occupied it, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Way, currently on night watch. His role was simple: monitor the ship's automated systems, ensure that nothing required human intervention, remain available in case of emergency. In 14 years, there had been no emergencies. The ship's AI handled course corrections, monitored structural integrity, managed power distribution from the fusion reactors, and maintained optimal conditions for the sleepers. Marcus sat at the primary console, reading. He was working his way through a collection of ancient Chinese poetry, texts that had been written more than 2,000 years before the Perseverance launched. He found something comforting in reading words that had survived so long, that had been read by hundreds of generations. It gave him perspective. He read slowly, letting each poem settle in his mind before moving to the next. Outside the small windows that ringed the bridge, stars provided the only light beyond his reading lamp. The ship hummed almost inaudibly, a sound so constant that Marcus usually forgot it was there. It was the sound of the engines, the life support systems, the rotation mechanism, all the countless components working in harmony to keep a small bubble of life intact in the void. Every 30 minutes, Marcus checked the system displays. Reactor output, nominal. Hull integrity, nominal. Life support, nominal. Suspended animation systems, nominal. Navigation, nominal. The Perseverance was traveling at approximately 12% of light speed, as it had been for 70 years. The ship had spent 3 years accelerating to this velocity, would spend 3 years decelerating at the end of the journey. But for now, it simply coasted, requiring no propulsion, carried forward by momentum through space that was, at this distance from any gravitational well, essentially frictionless. Marcus returned to his poetry. A poem about moonlight on a quiet river. A poem about the first snow of winter. A poem about saying goodbye to a friend, knowing they might never meet again. He wondered what the poets would have thought, knowing their words would one day travel between stars. Hydroponics. Bay 3. In hydroponics, Bay 3, Yuki Tanaka was harvesting lettuce. The work was meditative, the same motions repeated, the gentle sound of water flowing through the nutrient channels, the smell of growing things. The bay was warm and humid, filled with rows of vegetables growing under full-spectrum LED lights that mimicked Earth's sun. The hydroponics bays served multiple purposes. They supplemented the ship's food stores, provided fresh vegetables that were both nutritious and good for crew morale, and recycled carbon dioxide into oxygen, taking some strain off the main life support systems. But perhaps most importantly, they provided a connection to Earth. They were green and growing in a place that was otherwise metal and darkness. Yuki moved slowly down the row, checking each plant, removing any that showed disease or stress, placing the healthy lettuces in her collection basket. She would take them to the galley, where tomorrow they would be added to meals. A small taste of freshness in the recycled air. She had been a botanist before the mission. She had studied plant genetics, specialized in drought-resistant crops. She had applied to the Perseverance program, thinking she would help design the agricultural systems for the colony on Proxima Centauri b. Instead, she had spent 14 years growing lettuce in space. Sometimes she wondered about the life she had left behind on Earth. She had been 32 when she entered suspension for the first time. She had slept for 20 years, then awakened for what would be her only rotation of active duty. She was biologically 36 now, but chronologically she was 56. On Earth, her parents would be gone. Her siblings would be elderly if they still lived. Everyone she had known would have aged or died while she slept. When she returned to suspension in 6 years, she would sleep for another 300 years. She would never see Earth again. None of them would. This was a one-way journey for all practical purposes. The return trip would take another 400 years, and there were no provisions for it anyway. The Perseverance carried enough fuel to slow down when it reached Alpha Centauri, but not to speed back up again. They were going to a new world, and they would stay there, and that was that. Yuki found the thought neither frightening nor sad. It simply was. She had made her choice. She had said her goodbyes. And now she grew lettuce in space and found peace in the simple work and tried not to think too much about time and loss and everything that could never be recovered. The Sleep Monitoring Station. Dr. Okonkwo's actual workstation was in Medical Bay 2, in a room specifically dedicated to monitoring the suspended animation systems. The room was lined with displays showing data feeds from all 98,000 pods. Heart rate, brain activity, fluid levels, temperature regulation, cellular repair indicators. Amara spent 3 hours here every day, reviewing the data, looking for anomalies. The ship's AI flagged anything unusual, of course, but Amara believed in human oversight. The AI was reliable, but it wasn't perfect. It could miss patterns, subtle shifts that indicated a problem developing slowly. Today, or tonight, the distinction was arbitrary on the ship. Everything looked normal. 98,739 heartbeats, each one slowed to about 3 beats per minute. 98,739 sets of brainwaves showing the deep, slow patterns of suspended consciousness. The pods maintained them in a state that was not quite sleep, not quite hibernation, something in between. Their bodies performed only the most essential functions. Their minds drifted in something that might have been dreams, though the sleepers rarely remembered them upon waking. What did they dream about? Amara wondered. Did they dream of the past, of Earth and everyone they'd left behind? Did they dream of the future, of a new world waiting at the end of the journey? Or were their dreams abstract, formless things, consciousness touching only the edges of itself? Amara would find out eventually. In 6 years, she would enter a pod herself. She would sleep for 300 years. And when she woke, if her pod functioned properly, if no equipment failed, if no cosmic ray damaged her frozen cells beyond repair, she would emerge in orbit around an alien world. She would step onto soil that no human had ever touched. She would breathe air that had been processed by alien plants, look up at a sky dominated by a red dwarf star. Or perhaps she wouldn't wake at all. Perhaps she would drift in suspension forever, dreaming her slow dreams while the ship traveled on. Perhaps there was peace in that too. She finished her review, filed her reports, and returned to her quarters. Tomorrow would be the same, and the day after that, and the day after that, for 6 more years. But that was all right. Time moved slowly here, and that was the point. The journey was long. The journey required patience. As Amara lay in her bed, waiting for sleep, she imagined the ship from outside. A cylinder rotating slowly in the darkness, filled with sleeping people, carrying their hopes across the empty light years. A small thing in a vast universe, but also a remarkable thing, a brave thing, a tiny seed of life crossing the void to plant itself in new soil. She closed her eyes. Around her, the ship hummed its constant song. Below her, or above her, directions were strange in space. 98,000 people slept their long sleep, and Amara joined them in rest, dreaming her own small dreams, as the Perseverance traveled on through the endless, peaceful dark. Sleep well, traveler. We're all on this journey together. The stars will still be there tomorrow. Rest now. Let yourself drift. We have all the time in the world.